Good afternoon. My name is Raul Contreras, and I'm a proud immigrant New Yorker. I was just a few months old when my family came to the U.S. from Chile. My mother worked as a house cleaner, and my dad worked in catering and with limousine service. It wasn't always easy, but my parents strived to give my sister and I a small slice of the American dream. I was excited to go to college like my sister, but without work authorization, I knew I wouldn't be able to pursue my professional dreams. Then something amazing happened. On June 15th, 2012, President Obama's Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA, went into effect. Because of DACA, I was able to find a paying part-time job and internships, including one with the mayor's office. That internship opened up more doors, and today I am proud to work right here in this building and serve my fellow New Yorkers. I thank God every day I had DACA. Unfortunately, because of the Supreme Court's ruling today, so many people will not get the same chance I had. But I know a man who will keep on fighting for the rights of immigrants in New York and all over our country. He is the grandson of immigrants himself, my boss, and the mayor of New York City. A few words in Spanish. Estoy muy orgulloso de ser un inmigrante neoyorquino. Llegué de Chile con mi familia cuando solo tenía unos meses de edad. Mi mamá limpiaba casa y mi papá trabajaba en una empresa de catering. Y también estaba trabajando en un servicio de limusina. No fue fácil, pero mis padres trabajaron duro para que mi hermana y yo tuviéramos un pedacito del sueño americano. Pude estudiar en la universidad, pero yo sabía que no podía alcanzar mi sueño profesional sin un permiso de trabajo. Entonces, sucedió algo increíble. El 15 de junio del año 2012 entró en vigor el Programa de Acción Deferida para Niños Inmigrantes del presidente Obama, o DACA. Con DACA pude hallar empleo, incluyendo una con el alcalde de Nueva York, la alcaldía de Nueva York. Esto me abrió muchas puertas. Y hoy me siento orgulloso de trabajar en este edificio para servir a mis conciudadanos neoyorquinos. Le doy gracias a Dios todos los días por DACA. Lamentablemente, la decisión de la Corte Suprema hoy significa que muchas familias no tendrán la misma oportunidad. Sin embargo, conozco a un hombre que todavía lucha por los derechos de los inmigrantes en New York y todos nuestros países. Él mismo es un nieto de inmigrantes, mi jefe y el alcalde de Nueva York. Señoras y señores, the mayor, el alcalde Bill de Blasio.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well done. Raul, thank you. I really want to commend you for telling your story, for being an example of what this country and this city are about and are supposed to be about under our laws. And we want to thank you for being such a wonderful member of our team as well. Let's thank Raul, everyone. And I am so proud to stand beside Raul and wonderful fellow New Yorkers here with us, Mohammed and Henna, and AJ and Ivy and Fatima and Magdalena, all examples of what we're here to talk about. All young people who just wanted to be a part of this society, to live out the same hopes and dreams as everyone else, to contribute to the greatness of New York City and America. They're all standing here, and I share with them a sense of profound disappointment, and in fact anger, at the decision by the Supreme Court. Because with the stroke of a pen, the hopes of millions have been dashed. And so many people who are just trying to achieve what so many of us have come to expect have now seen that taken away from them. These individuals around me are living proof of the good that DACA and DAPA did for people. families that had to live in fear and doubt, having their problems resolved, their hopes affirmed. That's what it's supposed to be about. And the notion that now a roadblock has been thrown up by our own Supreme Court. It's a shocking day and a sad day for all immigrants in this country, and it feels like a step away from our values. President Obama did the right thing for this nation, and we are resolved today to be inspired by his actions, to not be deterred, to put our shoulder to the wheel for comprehensive immigration reform. There is a way to recapture the high ground and get the momentum back, and that's to push with all we have in the next Congress and with the new president for comprehensive immigration reform. And in that process, we will remind Americans that it was the Republican Party that stood in the way of all previous efforts at reform, that stood in the way of our opportunity to create a more perfect union. And they will be held accountable starting next year, because I think there's a growing consensus in this country about the need for comprehensive immigration reform. What does it mean for New York City? 220,000 New Yorkers would have immediately benefited had President Obama's executive action been affirmed. So there's almost 250,000 of our fellow New Yorkers who are hurting right now, whose rights and opportunities were taken away by our Supreme Court. And again, it's an affront to our values, but we don't just get mad. We organize. We're going to work together, everyone here, to right this wrong. And I want to thank everyone who's here. I want to thank Deputy Mayor Richard Bury and Commissioner for the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs, Nisha Argawal, our Commissioner for Social Services, Steve Banks, our Commissioner for Veterans Services, Lori Sutton. I want to thank Senator Adriano Espaillat. I want to thank Chair Carlos Menchaca of the Council Committee on Immigration, Councilman Ben Kalos, Councilman Dan Garodnick. I think others will be joining, and all the advocates, all the faith leaders, all the community organizations who are part of this gathering today. Also, a thank you to Deputy Mayor Herminia Palacio and Councilmember Idanis Rodriguez. We're here, and we're here on short notice because it means so much to all of us. We're all convinced that a major mistake was made by our Supreme Court. And by the way, one of the things that makes this clear to me is I worked with mayors all over the country. We had over 100 mayors sign on to the amicus brief in favor of the executive action because the leaders in every part of this country who know their communities best knew the executive action would help our people. Well, we will continue in that effort. And in the meantime, the City of New York will offer support and services to our immigrant brothers and sisters, to our fellow New Yorkers. We will not be in any way forced off that path. We believe in this city in things like providing legal services so families don't get torn apart. We believe in IDNYC, respecting all New Yorkers and giving them opportunities to live a better life. And we want our brother and sister immigrants to know that if they need help, and they particularly want to make sure that the help they get is legal and appropriate, and that no one attempts to take advantage of them, all they have to do is call 311 and just say DACA or DAPA, and they'll be connected to someone who can help them. Or go on our website, nyc.gov/deferred action, to get the help they deserve. We are a city of immigrants and proud of it, and we will not accept anyone who demeans immigrants. We won't give in to the voices of hatred that have come up so strongly in this country this year, attacking immigrants. We will remain true to New York values and defend immigrants, defend the rights of those who are here, and one day we'll make this nation whole with true comprehensive immigration reform. Just a few words in Spanish. Estamos muy decepcionados por la decisión de la Corte Suprema de no apoyar las reformas de inmigración del presidente Obama. Sin embargo, quiero reafirmar la solidaridad de nuestra ciudad con nuestros hermanos neoyorquinos indocumentados. Nueva York seguirá siendo una ciudad que acoge a todas las personas sin importar su estatus migratorio. Estamos listos para ofrecerles la ayuda legal que necesitan para vivir a salvo y seguros. Si necesitan ayuda, solo tienen que llamar al 311 y decir DACA o DAPA. With that, it will be my honor to thank everyone who's here. Thank you all for gathering so quickly in defense of our brother and sister New Yorkers and people all over this country who need us to have their back right now. And it's my pleasure now to introduce our great Commissioner for Immigrant Affairs, Nisha Argawal. There we go. Can I sneak by you?
Good afternoon, everyone. Today is a day of deep disappointment. That's an understatement. Immigrants help make New York City the greatest city in the world. Our diversity makes us the greatest city. And today we are surrounded by representatives from faith, community organizations, service providers, elected officials, impacted individuals, and so many more who care about immigrant rights and are part of our collective fight. Executive action would have enabled immigrant families to realize even more of their full economic and social potential within New York City. They and the city are deprived of that possibility through this decision. It would have meant more than $35 million in income tax revenue every year in New York City, more than $82 million in New York State. We will continue to connect New Yorkers to the resources they need for their families and communities to thrive. We have a program called Action NYC, which is the city's community-based legal services program for information and support. Most city services are accessible to all New Yorkers regardless of immigration status. That's education, it's emergency food and shelter, it's healthcare, it's legal services, and it's ID NYC. The city has very strong confidentiality protections for New Yorkers who are seeking help and services. As the mayor said, if you need help, if you have questions, please call 311 or go to the website nyc.gov/deferred action. We as a city will continue to model how diversity and inclusion work, and we will continue to call for urgently needed, always needed, federal immigration reform. And now, I would like to welcome to the podium my partner from the council, the chair of the Immigration Committee, Councilmember Carlos Menchaca.
Hola, mi gente. Buenas tardes a todos. There's nothing more comforting to be here with all of you today as we hear the decision, and we heard the decision of the Supreme Court earlier today. What I want to remind everybody is that we are here and we're standing together. Porque aquí en Nueva York estamos unidos como una familia. Y en las palabras de nuestros antepasados, mi casa es su casa, aquí todos son bienvenidos, aquí en Nueva York. And it's that message of welcome that we need to continue to spread throughout the rest of the country if we're going to get to immigration reform. And so we stand with heavy hearts and disappointment. I had some calls this morning with some people in Sunset Park, some parents that were waiting that would be eligible for DAPA. They're some of the 220,000 people in this city that could have overnight been eligible to come out of the shadows and to stand proudly as a New Yorker. Now, we know that our city continues to do much in the wake of ID NYC, getting people identification cards so they can engage with police departments. We brought in more money this year so that our immigrants and anybody who needs English classes can get them, so they can get better jobs, so they can go into their schools and advocate for their kids, because we know we have a huge problem there. And yet, in the wake of what we're doing here in New York City, we get to see our national politics play out. Donald Trump opens his mouth and hate spews. In Orlando, we saw a massacre against our Latino and LGBT people. And then now today, the Supreme Court is divided. This is personal for me as being an openly gay and a Mexican member of our community in the City Council. but we turn and we pivot to a more positive world. And we lift the stories that we heard today, like Raul, and like so many people who are here standing behind us. So let's lift our stories, because what we need to do is change the laws, and that is our next step for immigration reform. And we bring the stories of New York, but we bring the stories of our own lives. And that is what I'm asking everybody here today, that in the wake of this terrible, terrible announcement, that we have some work to do. And we do that in solidarity. And so I'm proud to continue to work in the City Council with all our colleagues and our Speaker, Melissa Mark Viverito, and our Chair for the Finance Committee, Julissa Ferreras Copeland, and all the members that are here today. We have some major work today. We have some major work to do today. And finally, I want to say, en español, unas palabras. La Corte más alta quizás está dividida, pero nuestros corazones, nuestras esperanzas, a través del país, seguirán unidos alrededor de una simple verdad. El sistema de las leyes de inmigración está roto y necesitamos más que una acción ejecutiva. Hay que dirigir nuestros esfuerzos de organizaciones a una reforma migratoria comprensiva. Esto es lo que merecemos, esto es por lo que vamos a luchar juntos. Y este será nuestro mensaje colectivo. Ya venga en noviembre, al entrar a las casillas de votaciones en cada estado. Let's turn our anger and our sadness into political power in November and make that voice loud and clear across the entire country. Thank you so much. We're with you together. Sí se puede.
Thank you, and now I'd like to introduce our partner at the state level, Assemblymember Nick Perry.
Thank you. Good afternoon. As if we didn't have enough reasons, the Supreme Court has given us another reason why we must mobilize our greatest extent, to our greatest extent, and our fullest strength to make sure that we dump Trump in November, to make sure that we elect in the office of president and in the federal legislature, the House of Representatives and the Senate, people who will not take America back to where so many of our leaders today on the other side of this issue hope to take us back to, but that we will move this nation forward. This nation is about opportunity. This nation is about liberty, and it's about access. And it's a nation built by immigrants. I am testimony to what happens when we don't build walls, and when we don't contribute to a sentiment that think that walls to keep people out is the way we should go. I'm an immigrant from Jamaica, and I am pleased to join all of you here today and to express how sad we are that in excess of 5 million new Americans will have to stay in the shadows. It's a shadow that casts over all of us, over America, worse than natural disasters. And we perpetrate that on ourselves. So it's a call to action. and it's a call that we must heed in the most serious of terms. So that in November, when we get a chance to exercise our franchise, those of us who have come out of the shadow, who have the opportunity to make our voices heard at the polls, that's where we will take action. The Supreme Court let us down. We thank those who stood up and made the right decision. But today, we must heed that call to remove that dark shadow that's not just cast, it's not that shadow that just keep so many young people, parents, their parents, and others in the shadow, away from the freedom they seek, but a shadow that we need to get our country from, remove our country from under that shadow as quickly as we can. Thank you so much.
And now I would like to invite to the podium the executive director of one of the largest statewide immigrant rights organizations, the New York Immigration Coalition, Steve Choi.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Steve Choi, and I first want to thank the mayor, I want to thank our champions in city council, and I want to thank our allies in state government as well. New York has been the beacon of light for so many immigrants for so many centuries. We want to recognize all the leadership that has been taken so far. I've been struggling a little bit to think about the right words to capture exactly how we feel. Pain, anger, fear, frustration, disappointment. But as I was thinking about it, I also thought about some other words. Faith, family, endurance, resilience, heart. And these are all things that the immigrant community has in great abundance. And we're going to need each and every one of them to be able to get the victory that we see at the end of this dark tunnel that we find ourselves at today. I think back 10 years ago, in 2006, there were hundreds of thousands of us. We marched in the streets of downtown Manhattan, calling for immigration reform, calling for justice for our immigrants. And yet, Congress failed us. Even though we were out there in millions all across this country, Congress failed to find immigration reform, failed to give us justice for our immigrants, and we mobilized again. We picked ourselves back up and we said, we are going to continue this fight. And in 2010, we mobilized again. And again, Congress failed us. So we picked ourselves back up and we continued to fight, to organize, to get out on the streets. And in 2012, we pushed President Obama to pass DACA. And in 2014, we pushed President Obama to announce his new administrative relief programs, and we rejoiced. And yet, a year and a half later, we find ourselves at a point where the Supreme Court has failed us. I can't imagine all the disappointment and fear and anger and frustration that all of our immigrant communities feel, that 5 million immigrant residents of the United States feel. And yet, we got to pick ourselves back up again. And I think this time, our task is crystal clear. We are going to have a choice. Less than 6 months from now, we are going to have a choice. What kind of president are we going to have? Are we going to have a president who walks away from this? Are we going to have a president who declines to do anything around immigration or administrative relief? Or are we going to have a president that is going to take up the banner of immigration, that's going to take up the banner of administrative relief, that's going to even expand administrative relief? And are we going to have a Congress that once again fails us? Or are we going to have a Congress that finally passes the immigration reform that we need, the justice for immigrants that we need? And so our task is crystal clear. We've got to pick ourselves back up once more. And I know the endurance of immigrant communities in New York. I know the resilience that they have, and we've got to pick ourselves back up once more. And we've got to fight. We've got to organize, we've got to mobilize, and we've got to make our voices clear so that every single elected official knows the voice and the power of immigrant communities, and that we end up with the president and the Congress that we need and we deserve. Are we going to continue to fight? I'm going to ask that to all of you. Are we going to continue to fight? Yeah. Are we going to continue to organize? Yeah. Will we fight for immigrant justice? Yeah. Will we fight for New York's immigrants? Yeah. Thank you.
And now, finally, to close us out, the Executive Director of Catholic Charities and a close partner of ours, Monsignor Kevin Sullivan.
Thank you. The sentiments that have been expressed are on target. The frustration, the anger, the disappointment are real. I make to you a commitment today that Catholic Charities stands to work even harder for the comprehensive immigration reform that we need. We stand committed to work with our fellow Catholic Charities agencies throughout this country. Second commitment, with the disappointment today, there are still our sisters and brothers immigrants who need the help that New York has given for many years. We have a commitment to continue to help people, whether they still need to stay in the shadows, out of the shadows, whatever their documented status is. We will help them despite that. The third commitment is right now, as we are here, we have people who are ready to answer the questions of the New American Hotline, those who are disappointed, who are fearful, who are frustrated, in more than 200 languages. We need to help our immigrant sisters and brothers in the midst of this disappointment. We need to be committed to continue to help regardless of status, and we need to be committed to make the change that will ultimately help our country to strive even better and our immigrants' comprehensive immigration reform. Hoy día es un día en que hay mucha tristeza, muchos problemas, pero es un día en que nosotros tenemos que luchar, tenemos que servir a nuestros hermanos, porque en el futuro necesitamos una nueva situación en que nuestros inmigrantes, nuestros hermanos y hermanas puede obtener todas las oportunidades que Nueva York ofrece. Gracias.
And everyone, one more very important guest, our public advocate, Tish James.
Today, millions of immigrant families feel the devastating shock waves of Republican dysfunction. Today, our deadlocked Supreme Court dealt setbacks to immigration reform by default, splitting its votes 4-4. A default ruling eviscerating President Obama's efforts through DAPA and DACA to make it possible for immigrant families to stay together and work in this country, to receive health care, and for students to be educated. This is ripping families apart who have sacrificed to make a better life in this country. A lockstep Republican Congress blocked all hope of immigration reform. Republicans blocked even considering Merrick Garland, one of the most qualified candidates for the position ever to be nominated, with previous glowing praise from Republicans and Democrats alike. Republicans have turned dysfunction into an art form. And unfortunately, dysfunction in our country has become the new normal. And because of this dysfunction, now one branch of government has to make its rulings by default. And today, Republican dysfunction has taken another victim. Pathways to citizenship are what this country has always been about. They are the engines that drive this country into its more democratic present. It's the reason why we have vibrancy and the reason why we have so much to salute and so much to celebrate. That is the reason why America is great. This is what democracy looks like. Dysfunction is not just a crisis of here and now. It is setting us backwards, denying hope and prosperity and democracy to those yearning to be free. The power, my friends, the power, my allies, lies in our hands. And so we must vote and vote and vote like never before. Because I believe that we shall always move forward, always, and backwards, never. And although this is a temporary setback, we will organize and we will all come together from one shore to the other shore, demanding freedom for all and celebrating the true democracy which is represented in this room. Republicans, you are on your way out, and we will take you out because we are the new America.
Thank you so much, everyone. This is a fight for families that will continue. Yes, we can. Sí se puede.
Lisa, thank you. Thank you. Barbara, thank you.
And when people are born,
Hey.